I'm here on a Saturday, and as you can see, other than the staff car, my car in the car park, no one else here, which is both sad and good. That's the entrance to the archaeological site. €4 to get in, and worth every penny, every drachma, every cent. I think well worth it. Just walking in, up the road, skirts the side of the hill, leading up to the northern hill. Good morning, welcome, and if you're a returning subscriber, welcome back. My name's Ant, and you find me today in a ruinous state, and the ruinous state is Olynthus, which I've come back to in northern Greece. It's a beautiful, unseasonably warm, late October day. There's a bit of background noise you might pick up today with some diggers and building going on in the background, so I apologise for that. And there's a bit of a breeze, so hopefully you'll be able to hear me against the wind noise. I did a video a year or so ago on my first visit, and I'm lucky enough to come back and do a bit more exploring, so I thought I might take a bit more time this time and see if I can get my facts right. I'm not an expert by any means, so please do go away and look up your own facts rather than rely on what I might tell you. But we're sitting on two flat-topped hills here at Olynthus. Down there is the Sandanos River, which is quite close, and the hills are about 30-40 metres high, and there's a hill to the south which they found some Neolithic and Bronze Age settlement. But the bit that I'm interested in today is the northern hill, doing a bit of exploring and looking at the ruins. Now, the ruins were excavated back in the early 20th century. Unfortunately, after they excavated them, they just left them, and so all the plaster and the mortar that was holding the walls together was exposed to the elements, and over time that got washed away, the walls collapsed. And so back in 1992, thanks to the European Union, they gave some money to come and rescue the ruins or restore them, or at least stop them deteriorating any further. We can at least see the outlines of the walls. And the walls of the town are made up of large rocks lifted from the river, rounded river-worn rocks. And they think that they were used for the foundations of the walls, and then afterwards were mud bricks, not baked bricks, but just mud bricks. And on top of the walls they were strengthened with timbers, and on top of that were terracotta tiles, and that kept the walls dry so they didn't deteriorate. And on the inside they had mortar and plaster and a sort of a red ochre colour. So I'm going to have a walk around today, and hopefully we can see what we can see. I'll show you the map now. I'm just rested the camera on there where you're looking from. There's an outline map that we can orientate ourselves, and you can see the outline of the city. Now, the city was a planned city, and it's laid out on the principles of Hippodamian layout, and he believed in he was the first town planner, really, and he set everything out recommended setting everything out in a grid system and having neighbourhoods. So you'd have an area, a civic area, you have a place for housing, you'd have a marketplace, and a place for workshops, which was quite radical thinking at the time. And just up the coast, about 45 minutes, there's the big city of Thessaloniki, which back in 1917 had an earthquake, and the old town collapsed. And they laid out the new city on a grid system, which was first thought of by Hippodamus way back when. So nothing changes. It's obviously a good system, and the Americans use it, and the Australians. New cities are often laid out on a grid system, and it's almost aligned to magnetic north. So the streets run, well, the avenues as they call them, the people that excavated it said, well, we're going to name the avenues are going to go north-south, and we're going to have streets running east-west. And those streets divided up into blocks of about 10 houses. They all had a shared roof. Avenue A is just here, Avenue B is a bit further over there, and Avenue B was the main commercial street. And we're going to have a look at that now. So here we are at the map. You can see the layout. Blue section here is the excavated area, and the river Sandanos running down here. And this area over here is actually off the side of the hill, and that's where later villas were built. And you can see they've excavated some of the villas. If I move across, there's a larger scale plan here. Down the left-hand side, you can see the city wall, fortified wall. This is what they call Avenue A, as it runs north. And off Avenue A, you can see there's blocks here. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So there's blocks of 10 houses, and those houses have a similar number of rooms. No rooms have a particular function. They surround a courtyard, generally faces south, and then these orange blobs on the map you can see indicate. I can see there's a sit bath. If I come down to this corner, you can see there's a fountain, and then these orange blobs here indicate shops. And this is Avenue B that I was referring to. That's the commercial area. The main sort of thoroughfare. So let's go and have a look at the ruins. Right, I've just come down to start at the southwestern corner. I'm standing inside one of the buildings. Just to my right is the fortified wall, and the hills stand in a very fertile area that's blessed with plentiful water. The water comes down from the Polygyros mountains or hills in the background. They rise to about 3,000 feet, and the town was actually fed through pipes that came 8 miles, 12 kilometres underground, that brought water in to the city. The city at its height only lasted about 100 years, less than 100 years, and it supported at its height about 10,000 people, they think. The city is quite cleverly laid out. The streets are laid out such that they make use of the natural terrain, so when it rains, the water runs off through a drain system, so it washes away all the muck and what have you, gets taken off down the hill, so it cleanses. So not only do they bring in water under pressure from the hills, and it leads down to a fountain. They found pipes. They actually dug tunnels into the hill and laid a big terracotta pipes held together with mortar in each section about 1 metre long, and they're 6 metres below the surface, and that's fed a public pressure fountain so they could get their water. And then each house had its own rain collecting system off the roofs that fed the cisterns, so they had another source of water as well. And you might be able to hear me. I've got 3 or 4 buzzards overhead, so every now and again you hear this gear, which is quite nice. And last time I came, it was springtime, and the area was full of butterflies, and there still are butterflies around now, nearly in November. So that's very pleasant to see. I'm now walking up Avenue A, running south to north. I do apologise, I'm wearing sunglasses. I don't like doing videos with sunglasses on. I like to be able to see the whites of my eyes, but as you appreciate, today is very bright. So we've got all the houses, the blocks laid out on that side and on this side, and the roads would have been paved. They had pavements. And that ran off into a drainage system, so the water all went off into the right places. And on the corners of each block, they put large rocks to protect the corners of the building, so horses and carts didn't hit the buildings. I've just turned into the first street, and one of the first things that you're struck by is just all this terracotta. So this is all clay, baked clay. It's just everywhere, these archaeological sites, probably roof tiles. After the Philip of Macedon came and laid siege to the city, he knocked it all down, and the archaeologists found a burning layer, and then they found a layer on top of all this roof tile. As the timbers collapsed, the roofs all came down. And this is why you find it everywhere. I find it I'm touching stuff that somebody made a roof tile back in 480 BC, and what's left of it, their fingerprints and bits and pieces, are still impressed. You can find often in the tiles, and paw prints of cats and dogs that ran over the wet tiles, and it's all still here. Amazing. I've just come across this what would be a terracotta, I imagine, sit bath. So you would have sat in the bath here, poured water over yourself. You'd have a little pool for your feet, probably a combination of warm water and oils, and they like to keep themselves very clean as we do, so hygiene was obviously very important to them. Within each block of 10 houses you had a block of 5 and a block of 5. Between the two there's a narrow alleyway that the houses drain through pipes like this terracotta pipe, and the drains zigzag their way down between the 2 blocks of 5. So when there was a heavy rain, the wastewater and the heavy rain would get washed away, and so the drains were self-cleansing. I don't know if you can make out, but there's a very large cistern down there for collecting the water with some sort of overflow arrangement. Perhaps you haul it out in a bucket and throw it into the tank next to it. If I pan back, there's a tank there with an interconnecting pipe. Each house is made up of a number of rooms. I think I'm standing in a courtyard. The courtyard's tended to face south. Well, that's south, get the warmth of the day. Along the north side there was a portico, and they had wooden columns with stone capitals at the top, Doric stone capitals at the top. And the rooms were divided into, you had, I think one of those oikos, which was the sort of the cooking preparation area. And they also had a room called an andron, sorry. And those rooms tended to be for men only. They had a raised floor, a platform around the outside about 0.9 metres high, and the men would lounge on their sides, eating, telling stories, listening to the flute, reciting poetry, and general revelry. And then they had a central drain, so once you've finished having your party, the gentlemen would come out and then they would sluice down the water. That would go to a central drain, that would go off to the back alley, and then that would make its way down the hill and eventually off to the sea, which is about 2.5 kilometres away. The sea is the Gulf of Tyrone, I think it's called, is about 2.5 kilometres away, so that's nearby. Pastas was the name for their portico. Last time I came here, these mosaics were covered up, but now it looks like they've repaired them, restored them, or uncovered them certainly. So they've swept the sand away, and you can see a nice sort of floral geometric shape picked out in white and dark blue pebbles. They've obviously been down to the river or to the beach, picked out the smooth, nicely rounded, colourful pebbles, the ones they wanted, brought them back here and put the floral motif in the front. Looks like a curling wave symbol around the outside, and then a sort of a geometric, very sort of rectilinear pattern around the outside of that. I don't know, but I suspect this may have been an andron here. It's obviously another mosaic, higher status, and it seems to be surrounded by this an area, platform area, where perhaps they reclined. But the houses were a combination of apartments, reception rooms, preparation rooms, and also workshops. So they cater for everything really, and there are steps on some of the houses, so that suggests they went up to a second level. There's the drain leading out from the centre of the house, and I'm standing on one of the east-west streets. You can see the large stones that they put there by the entrance to their house, give them some protection, probably standing in the portico area, and then the paved cobbled street. There are some nice flat slabs, probably to support pillars and a portico. Sadly rather damaged terracotta pipes. One of the pipes jutting out into the back alley. I'll turn around, you can get a better idea of what the back alley looked like. That's one of the back alleys separating the two blocks. Just going to walk you inside. I'm standing in Avenue A, going to walk you inside one of the buildings. You can see the flat slabs either side of the entranceway. So I'm coming in from the road, we're going into the house. And this is my interpretation of it, so I might not be right, so do take this with a pinch of salt. Let me come into the courtyard area, and I suspect the room off to your right there was the andron. the male entertaining room, and then there were smaller rooms that might have been accommodation for ladies, possibly even slaves, and then rooms for cooking and workshops, general entertaining and living. So I'm standing in the centre and looking, as I turn around you can see the various rooms, and a small room there, perhaps that was a sort of the ante room. If that was an ante room, perhaps this room over here, I suspect, because it's got sand on it. Ah, that's more likely to be the andron there, isn't it? With an ante room in the front for receiving. And it's hard to imagine, isn't it? All the song, the revelry, the roistering, the mirth, the chatter, all going on about 480 BC. Just come across another little bathroom, another sit bath, and this bathroom, just make the threshold out on the right hand side. This one had a posh floor, which was all the rage back then. System, you can see the drain running down the centre there and then popping out to the road. That's a view north. There's still plenty to be excavated. That's a view to the east, and again there's still plenty of the town that needs to be uncovered. Anyone has the money. Right, I'm not very good on my Greek history. It gets quite complicated, so you're best off looking this up. But I think the Bottilaeans were here first. They were sort of sold out to the Chalcidians, or the Chalkidiki tribe, who were friends then with the King of Macedonia, and they were the enemies of Athens. And because being enemies of Athens, they sided with the Persians, Xerxes, and against the Spartans. But then one of Xerxes' generals on his way back on the retreat thought, well, actually I don't think you're all that loyal to us, so he laid siege to the city. And this is after the Chalcidians thought, oh, actually we don't think we're too safe living in settlements round about. Let's go and up onto these flat top hills and make a fortification there. And because they weren't friends with Athens, they were friends with the Macedonians, and then all that changed. They started to they made their own league, the Chalcidian League, and it's a very prosperous place in terms of trading. They minted their own silver coins, and the silver coins had a spread eagle on one side and a horse tethered to a column on another side, on the obverse. Because they were friends again with Athens, Philip of Macedon didn't like that, so in 382 he laid siege to the town, and two of his half-brothers were in here as well. And the archaeologists have found the burn layer, the destroying layer, as it were, and they know it was him because they found the lead slingshot shots and also the bronze arrowheads stamped with Philip of Macedon's crest. And so the city only lasted about 84 years and was never re-inhabited thereafter. I mean, I think people lived here on and off in later years, but it never recovered. You've caught me walking down Avenue B, there's Street 5 off to my right, and they think Street B was the more commercial street, and there's 3 units here they think were commercial shops. So I'm coming in through the doorway of one, give you an idea of the scale, and I imagine perhaps that was another doorway where they serve people food, and into another smaller doorway, or perhaps this was the way they went into their house and that was the shop area, I don't know. But what they have found here is very large storage jars. They kept grain, olives, oil and wine were in more pointy jars, amphora, fruit, and those large storage jars were buried in the soil, I imagine to keep things cool and out of the way, and they're obviously a sign of wealth, and they know this because outside a number of the houses here they've found plaques on the wall which are the property sales particulars. So amazingly, archaeologists can find out the value of the property, they knew who was living there and how many storage jars were in it. So finding something like that is just wonderful for archaeologists. In the foreground there, you can just make out the large column bases for the assembly hall. I've come to the southern end of Avenue B. I know there's not much to look at now. We're actually standing in the fountain house that was excavated by a chap called Mr. Robertson, and the house extended this way behind me, and the water was brought in through pipes under pressure. They managed to collect water into tanks underground and maintain the pressure, and then underneath your feet where you're standing watching me, there's a pipe that came out this way to about here by looking at the plan, and beautiful fountain, which must have been, on a hot day like today, must have been an absolute godsend and a real pleasure. Looking out to what I think they refer to as the Southeastern Spur. That's the view northwest to the hills of Polygyros. We're down in the arsenal. You can see the arsenal, and if you make out, the walls are much thicker here than the other building walls in the city. Just as I hoped, come across one of our tortoise friends, Toby the tortoise. Hello. Hello. You going to come and say hello? Hello. I've had a couple of tortoises just like you when I was growing up, and thankfully they've stopped importing them now because they're becoming quite rare, so it's still warm enough for them to walk about. I do think tortoises walk slowly, but in my experience you put them down and you turn away for 2 seconds and they've gone, haven't they? You look quite healthy, and I think a bit like trees, you can count the rings, see how old they are. What a great little chap. Oh, lady, let's have a look. No, I think that the back is a long tail, and I can't remember if the long tail means it's a lady one or a gentleman one. It might be that it's a... Oh, don't fall off. But I suppose he's hiding from buzzards or eagles. Birds can come down and get at them. Nice camouflage shell. You can do some walking for us. I'll leave you in peace. Well, blow me, he just walked up to the 20 feet away from the last tortoise and he found another one. A bit smaller, this chap. There's a magnificent rock-cut tomb, a single piece of rock. You can just make out the feet down towards each corner. Well, I think they've excavated something like 3 cemeteries. Not all the cemeteries that are here, but 3 of them. They've dug up about 560 graves. Well, I'm just sitting, relaxing at the end of my trek, down by the little exhibition room in the shade, being bitten by little tiny mosquitoes. And there's all sorts of bits of plinth and marble and grinding stones being dragged down and left in the grass here. Imagine for someone, hopefully in the future, to figure out what they were and where they came from. Well, to think that less than a week ago I was in a Harnage Hill fort in Wiltshire, and now I'm in another ancient place in Greece. Stone to Tom Midas, big water pipe, grinding stone, all sorts of bits and pieces. Perhaps they were presses, fluted columns, troughs, pedestal bases. This one is decorated with sort of acanthus leaves. Again, it looks like a column base. Looking east, and I'm actually down at the River Sandaros, is it? And I know it's the end of the season. As you can see, the river is very dried up. Some sheep and a very hot-looking sheepdog warning me off. So I've come to the end now, leave of my return to Olynthus. Some of you might have seen my first effort, the video. Apologies for repeating bits and pieces, but hopefully for those who don't get an opportunity to visit, it gives you an idea of what's here and helps you visualise it a bit more. For those of you who might be interested, I hope it might prompt you to come in and having a look yourself, because it truly is a fascinating place. There is a little museum, but it's just an exhibition of photographs. There's no actual artefacts there, so I'd imagine they're in a museum elsewhere, perhaps Thessaloniki, a dusty cabinet. It would be nice to have them in situ, so put everything in context. But I hope you enjoyed the video and look forward to the next one. I hope you get to visit this place and enjoy it as much as I have. Goodbye.